Welcome to Tuesday, March 12th, 2024. Well, a Pacific storm system is on the way for the Rocky Mountain West and the Plains. The Pacific Northwest is going to be feeling the effects of moisture coming in with areas of rain and snow, then pushing into the interior, getting over the Cascades into Idaho, eastern Washington, Oregon, Nevada, northern California, then across Utah, western areas of Wyoming. We did see a few snow showers in some mountain ranges last night as a little wave came through, but the main event still pushing on in off the Pacific Northwest coast. Then we're going to see an area of low pressure get organized around the Four Corners region as we get into the end of the week. This will interact with a surge of some colder Canadian air coming down out of Alberta through Montana, across Wyoming, into northern Colorado and into the plains. At the same time, that Pacific storm spins up over the Four Corners area. So the interaction between those two events will produce that narrow band of moderate to heavy precipitation that we showed you yesterday. A lot of consistency in the data and the modeling, so confidence is growing. Travelers and livestock interests, be prepared for colder, wet conditions. This will cause some travel hazards, some cold, wet conditions that may be a concern for young and weak livestock in some areas. This is not a monster March storm. It's of moderate intensity. It's not a classic March blizzard situation. It's a typical March system, which produces good amounts of moisture in the mountains with high water content, which is exactly what you want for the snowpack this time of year. And for some lower elevations, some good moisture. It's not, though, going to be a big, intense storm system. But if you are traveling, especially from Wednesday night through early Friday in the region, and even into the weekend down into Arizona and New Mexico, you need to be prepared for it. Colder temperatures come in over the weekend, nothing terribly cold, but it's going to be chilly as some Canadian air comes in on the backside. We do have a break in the weather developing basically during the weekend while it will be chilly. But really early next week, we have another break. Then mid to late next week, we have another system coming on in. The pattern is going to stay active. The satellite imagery this morning doesn't show a lot of organization, but if you look very carefully right here, you can see a little spin right there, the center of the upper level low off the coast of British Columbia. But we have a lot of strong, moist jet stream energy coming off the Pacific into Northern California, pushing Pacific moisture into the region. This moisture later today and tonight into Wednesday morning will move across the Continental Divide, producing mountain snow, and there's going to be a period of rain and snow showers initially tonight and into early Wednesday across the Northwest and some of the Rockies. But we have to wait till the system gets itself into the Four Corners area before things really get going. This is where we have advisories for winter weather. Notice it's really focused on the highest elevations. The blue and the purple and the pink are areas where we have winter storm watches, warnings, and advisories in effect. So you can see the mountain ranges of Colorado, southern Wyoming, the Bighorns, northwestern Wyoming's mountains, then back here into the Pacific Northwest, all of Utah's mountains here, but not a lot out into the plains. But notice the Palmer Divide here in Colorado, and the Cheyenne Ridge area up in southeastern Wyoming, where you're up higher in elevation, 6,000 feet and above, is where the wet snow accumulations are going to be a little bit more pronounced. And here you can see it from the Wyoming perspective. We do have a winter storm watch for many areas of central and eastern Laramie County. This does include the Cheyenne area. Then you can see the major mountain ranges getting into the act. But the lower elevations will as well. But it's not going to be a big one, but of moderate intensity. It will bring some needed moisture to many areas. So this is what it will look like today. Still generally a westerly flow across the nation, keeping mild Pacific air into the flow, but a buckling of the jet stream as that strong upper level wind pattern hits the west coast. There we get the buckle. Then we get the upper level low. By tomorrow afternoon, late tomorrow afternoon, the upper level low is going to be over Salt Lake. So this is going to feed Pacific moisture into the region. Colder Canadian air is going to want to come in like this, and we have that flow of moisture up from the southeast adding extra humidity. So there's a bit of a convergence coming up from this low, the colder Canadian air, and the clockwise flow around the high. And this is where this axis of heavier moisture is going to be, in that area where the air masses are converging. By Friday morning, that upper level low slides southwestward all the way to right around the Arizona-California border. So that's going to focus the heavier moisture down here. So the southwestern United States is going to get some needed rain and mountain snow out of this, while this axis of moisture here will weaken by Friday and into Saturday as that Canadian cold front then heads up to the Great Lakes and the high pressure comes in around behind it. So this is by Friday morning. This is by Sunday morning. See the low? It barely moves. Kind of gets stuck down there. It weakens, but it gets stuck down there in the southwestern United States. So going to be kind of gloomy and rainy down in parts of the desert southwest this upcoming weekend. This high pressure ridge will build up, grow, but northerly flow will keep Canadian air along and east of the divide, keeping temperatures chilly, not terribly cold, but chilly through the weekend and continuing mountain snow shower activity. So let's look to see how the precipitation pattern grows between today, and this goes all the way up till Saturday. So you can see the precipitation spreading in from the southwest and northwest, and then a real cluster there of a lot of yellow and blue over the southwestern United States, the Front Range of Colorado and southern Wyoming, then across Nebraska and far northern Kansas there. So let's take a look at the static image of the heaviest precipitation. Now what we're showing you is the national blend of models. Instead of me showing you all the different ones, this is blending them all together. So this kind of gives an average of all the models. So what you want to see here is you want to look for the pattern. You want to look for where is the consistency in the heavier moisture, and here's that axis we've been showing you right there. The center of that axis, both north and south of it, will have the heaviest moisture. You get further north and south from that axis, it will be lighter. But there's going to be over central and northern Wyoming some light to moderate amounts of rain and snow on the plains, snow in the mountains, heavier snow into the mountains of Colorado, Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico there. And then we're going to have a good rain and wet snow event across Nebraska for the second week in a row, as well as for the northeast plains of Colorado. But unfortunately for this area right here, downsloping will keep you in a little bit of a dry hole there. Notice in portions of Wyoming, the normal snow holes that you get, the Bighorn Basin, the Upper Green River Basin here, a little bit of a snow shadow there from the upslope conditions causing downslope on the other side of the mountains. And you can really see that on the snowfall forecast. Notice the higher terrain, the Cheyenne Ridge, the Palmer Divide, and then as you get into the higher elevations of the foothills and the Front Range along and west of I-25 is where you're going to see the heavier snowfall. As you get out a little bit lower in elevation, it's going to be rain first, then changing over to snow. That's why it looks like these fingers. Here's the Pine Ridge as well, up around that Lusk area, up along near Chadron and north of Alliance, then the higher Black Hills. So the elevation will play a role in terms of where the heavier snow will fall. We talked about travel concerns. Yep, along Interstate 80, along Interstate 70s, higher elevations, I-25 as well. Then as you get up into places like South Pass, Togety Pass, Powder River Pass, you're going to have some travel concerns. Now, let's stick our neck out a little bit and look at the 30-day outlook and look long range a little bit. I told you at the beginning that the pattern was going to stay active. What we're looking at here is the average of the 500 millibar pattern for the last, basically not exactly the last week of March, but for the week of March 21st through the 28th. Where you see blue, the long-term trends, if you average this week together, is showing where the low pressures are going to want to be. The brighter areas is where the high pressures are going to want to be. And so consistently, the western and central United States is going to be under low pressure. And anytime we get a ridge up here, you go into the fridge. So this is a colder trend. This is also a trend where you're going to keep the precipitation going. This little low here is going to continue to feed possible more moisture into the desert southwest and to California. So this is a cold, stormy look for the March 21st through 28th period. So something to put in the back of your mind for later in the month. And the new 30-day outlook from the European model, the precipitation anomaly, wherever you see green is above average precipitation for the next 30 days. This takes us all the way up to April 25th. So we're going to continue to see the storm track going like this. across the United States. And the temperature regime is still 30 days out, more often than not, a little bit colder than average in the west. So this continues the trends that we talked about with the Eastern Pacific Oscillation, the Arctic oscillations. So the rest of March into April is going to stay very active. A quick La Niña El Niño update. I wanted to show you the sea surface temperature anomalies across the globe. This bright orange area is where we've been watching the El Niño for the last 10 or 11 months. Notice this little patch of blue. See that right there? That's some colder water coming up to the surface now. So the beginning of the end to El Niño starting to show up as we've been looking at. And in a podcast later this week, I'm going to show you what is expected with the sea surface temperature anomalies between now and the end of the year. They're quite remarkable and something that we're going to have to keep an eye on. And we'll leave that for later this week. In the meantime, get ready for this next Pacific wave. We'll see you tomorrow.